Welcome to Nazarene, Israel. My name is Norman Willis, and last week we gave a very important teaching called the Torah and the Testimony. And the reason we gave that important teaching was to prepare for this week's teaching, which is even more important, about hearing Yahweh's voice. And the reason hearing Yahweh's voice is so important is that all Israel is commanded to obey Yahweh's voice. We certainly can't obey Yahweh's voice if we can't even hear it. So before we jump into this week's presentation, first we want to quickly recap the main points of last week's presentation on the Torah and the Testimony. And in that presentation, we talked about what is the true definition of the Torah, as well as why most Messianic leaders and teachers don't really know. We also talked about why there's more than one Torah. There's a Torah for the firstborn priesthood, a Torah for the Levitical priesthood, and also a Torah for the Melchizedekian priesthood. And we talked about why we're presently part of the Melchizedekian priesthood, and that's why we should be following the Melchizedekian Torah. We also talked about why the Messianic leaders and teachers don't understand this, and that's why most of them are still teaching bits and pieces of the Levitical Torah, which won't pertain to us until we come back to the land of Israel after Armageddon. But we also talked about the relationship between these different Torot, don't say Torahs, say Torot, it's a feminine plural, and the Spirit. So this week, with all that preparation, we want to talk about how we can hear Yahweh's voice. Because once again, we're commanded to obey Yahweh's voice, and we certainly can't obey Yahweh's voice if we can't even hear it. And then we realized as long as we're doing that, we might as well include another section next week on the two different types of prophecy, because all of these subjects are intricately related. But as we saw last week, Israel left Egypt in Exodus chapter 12. And then in Exodus chapter 13, the firstborn priesthood was instituted. So then in Exodus chapter 19, Yahweh told Israel, "Now therefore, if we will indeed obey his voice and keep his covenant, then we shall be a special treasure to him above all people, for all the earth is his." And what we see here is two main primary components. The first component is that of obeying his voice, and that means we need to listen for the Spirit. We need to hear the Spirit's voice. We're going to talk about that in this presentation. And then the second part is we need to keep his covenant. And this is the specifics of the Torah, the commandments, the judgments, the ordinances, the statutes, the laws, etc. But the important thing to remember here is that the way we got his covenant is that we were listening to his voice to begin with, and we wrote the specifics of the covenant down. So both of these components, obeying his voice and keeping his covenant, both depend on obeying his voice. That is, we have to be able to hear the voice of the Spirit. And again, we're going to talk about this next week, because that's effectively what prophets do, is they hear the voice of the Spirit and then they speak or write according to it. But the same commands apply also to the Levitical priesthood, because it's the same precepts. Yahweh wants us to hear his voice, and he wants us to obey the specifics of his covenant that he commanded by his voice in earlier times. That's why he says in Devarim, or Deuteronomy, chapter 28, starting verse 1, he says, "Now it shall come to pass, if you will diligently obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to observe," or in Hebrew would be shomer, meaning to guard or to keep carefully all of his commandments. That's two components: hear his voice and obey the written commandments that were dictated earlier. He says, "Which I command you today, that Yahweh your Elohim will set you high above all the nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you, because you obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim." And when he says all these blessings shall come on us and overtake us, it means we won't even be able to run away from them. These blessings will overtake us because we are obeying the voice of Yahweh our Elohim, including his written commandments, which he commanded as a bridal contract to our ancestors many years ago in the wilderness of Sinai. But the thing, people get lost and confused, and as we talked last week, the rabbinical order has a mistaken legalistic concept that the Torah can be broken down into some alleged list of 613 do's and don'ts, and that if we'll just do all the things on the list of things to do and we'll avoid doing the things on the list of things not to do, then we can basically do whatever else we want. And that's basically how Orthodox Judah operates. And the Messianics, by and large, have adopted this same mistaken interpretation from them, and most of the Messianics have no concept at all about what the Melchizedekian Torah is all about or how it is we're supposed to be obeying it. But the way we need to understand the Torah is that Yahweh is speaking to his adopted, abused children. So it would be as if Yahweh were to say, son, I know you've had trouble. I know you were born in Egypt. I know you have an Egyptian mom. Her name's Asenath. I know you're raised in Babylon. I know you've picked up all kinds of bad habits. I know you've got all kinds of problems. But I love you so much. You don't have any idea how much I love you. Okay? Now, here's what I want you to do. I know you've got troubles right now. But if you're going to listen to my voice, okay, and I'm also going to give you some house rules to follow. Okay? But just because you obey my house rules doesn't mean you don't need to listen to my voice from moment to moment. Okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to study my house rules. And then I want you to listen to what I tell you from moment to moment. And if you will do that, then I will retrain you. And not only will you become worthy to be a bride for my son Yeshua, but I'm going to use you to establish and then run Yeshua's ordered millennial kingdom. But the only way you can do that is if you study my house rules and if you listen to my voice from moment to moment. And if you do that, everything's going to turn out just fine. Well, Yahweh witnesses to this in many different places, and he speaks about the importance of this in many different places. For example, in Isaiah or Yeshayahu, chapter 8 and verse 20, Yahweh says, to the Torah and to the testimony, if they do not speak according to this word, it's because there is no light in them. We look up this word light. It's Strong's Hebrew 7837, shahar. It means morning dawn or daybreak. So what Yahweh is effectively saying is, to the specifics of what I commanded and to the manifestation of my son's spirit, because that's what the testimony is when we manifest Yeshua's spirit. So if they don't understand which Torah we're under, and if they don't understand that we're under the Melchizedekian Torah right now, and if they're not teaching according to the Melchizedekian Torah, if they don't even know what it is, and they're not even manifesting Yeshua's spirit, it's because daybreak, the morning dawn hasn't yet dawned on them. The daylight hasn't broken for them. They're still in darkness. Leave them alone. It's like the blind following the blind. They're all going to fall into a pit. Just leave them alone. Get away from them. Save yourself. Yahweh's speaking the same thing to his people also in the days of Jeremiah or Yirmiyahu the prophet in chapter 11, starting in verse 1. It says, the word that came to Yirmiyahu from Yahweh, saying, hear the word, not read, not think, not make it up, not check out the Talmud. He says, hear the words of this covenant, the one that Yahweh spoke, and speak to the men of Judah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and say to them, thus says Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, cursed is the man who does not obey the words of this covenant, which I commanded your fathers in the day I brought them out of the land of Egypt, from the iron furnace, saying, obey my voice and do according to all that I command you. And that's how you shall be my people, and I will be your Elohim. So what he's saying is the same thing. We have to hear his voice moment to moment, and we have to obey his house rules, which he dictated to our fathers many, many years ago. It's the same thing. Now, here's where it gets tricky, because Satan also has a voice. Notice in Bereshit, or Genesis, chapter 3 and verse 1, it tells us that the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which Yahweh Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, notice this, with his voice, has Elohim indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? Trying to get us to question what the things are that Yahweh has commanded. So Satan has an easier time with us because Satan is going to tempt us with the lusts of our eyes, with the lusts of our flesh, and with our pride. It's going to be much, much easier for us to follow Satan's voice and the voice of his minions, and they also have voices, because they're going to tell us to do things that are gratifying and pleasing to our flesh. He can also speak with a very loud voice and an angry voice. He can push us into wanting to do things. He'll talk to us when we're angry. He'll try to get us to continue on in anger. Whereas Yahweh is going to speak to us with a very still, small voice. It's going to be a very calm, very quiet, very confident voice. And we need to learn to distinguish and differentiate between the two. That's so important. In verse 6, it says that when the woman, Hava, or Eve, saw that the tree was good for food, that's the lusts of the flesh, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, that's the lusts of the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one worldly wise, and that's our pride. She took of its fruit, and she ate, and she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. So this was a terrible thing because they began thinking about what they could do apart from hearing and obeying Yahweh's voice. It's not that we're not allowed to think. We have brains. Yahweh expects us to use them. But first and foremost, we're supposed to hear his commandments and then think within the confines of that. And what Satan wants us to do is he wants us to think outside the confines of that. That's the big difference. And it's an easy mistake to make. So we always have to be vigilant and watchful. Verse 8, notice, and they heard the sound of Yahweh Elohim walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh Elohim among the trees of the garden. And Yahweh Elohim called to Adam and said to him, where are you? As if he didn't know. So Adam said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. Now, it's the same word in verse 8 as it is in verse 10. Notice, it says that Adam and Hava heard the sound or the call of Yahweh Elohim walking. But in verse 10, this qualifies as hearing the voice of Yahweh Elohim. So what we need to understand here is that Yahweh's voice can either be a voice or it can be a sound. Now we take this word, the Strong's Concordance, it's Strong's Hebrew Concordance, H6963, kol. There's two ways to spell it. They're both pronounced the same, and it's from an unused root meaning to call aloud, and it translates to either a voice or a sound. And this is one of the things that's so important for people to understand, is because many times people are listening for a literal audible voice. And if they don't hear a literal audible voice, or they don't hear audible words in the inner ear, then they think that Yahweh is not speaking to them. But that's not true, because Yahweh is always speaking to us, because he commands us to hear and obey his voice. So he's always speaking to us. It's simply a matter of us learning how to tune in to what Yahweh is saying through his Spirit. Was a question in the days of Shemuel or Samuel. In 1 Samuel chapter 3, starting in verse 8, Shemuel's learning, what does the voice of Yahweh Elohim sound like? So Yahweh Elohim is calling Shemuel. And in verse 8, Yahweh calls to Shemuel again a third time. So Shemuel rises up and goes to Eli, and he says, "No, here I am, because you did call me." So then the light comes on for Eli, and he perceives that Yahweh is the one calling Shemuel. He says, okay. So Eli said to Shemuel, "Okay, go and lie down. Go back and lie down, and it shall be, if Yahweh calls you again, that you should say, 'Speak, Yahweh, for your servant hears.'" So then Shemuel went and laid back down in his place, and then Yahweh came and stood and called Shemuel as at other times, "Shemuel, Shemuel." And Shemuel answered, "Speak, Yahweh, for your servant hears." So Shemuel began to understand what it is to hear Yahweh's voice. Now, it can be a literal voice or it can be a sound. We see in Isaiah or Yeshayahu chapter 30 and verse 21, it tells us, "Your ears shall hear a word behind you." We're talking about the inner ear. We're talking about spiritual hearing, saying, no. This is the way. Walk in it. Don't go that way. I want you to go this way. I don't want you to choose that. I want you to choose this. We have to listen for it. Whenever we turn to the right hand or whenever we turn to the left, all we have to do is listen. And this is the problem, is that most people are not aware that they need to be listening for a spiritual voice from moment to moment. But once they realize that it's a question of hearing what Yahweh is already saying, then it becomes a simple matter of discipline and obedience. It's simply something that we have to learn to do, and that's all. It just takes practice, and practice makes perfect. It can be a literal voice. In Matityahu or Matthew chapter 3 and verse 17, it says, "Suddenly a voice came from heaven, saying, 'This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased.'" And again, in Matityahu chapter 17 and verse 5, "While Yeshua was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them." This is the transfiguration on the mount. "And suddenly a voice came out of the cloud, saying, 'This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him.'" But is it a voice, or is it a sound? Or is it perhaps both? Because in Yohanan or John chapter 12, starting in verse 28, Yeshua says, "Father, glorify your name." And then a voice or a sound came from heaven, because it's the same word, kol, saying, "I have both glorified it and will glorify it again." Therefore, the people who stood by and heard it, so the people who heard it said that it had thundered. They heard the sound. Others said, "A messenger has spoken to him," and they heard the voice. So perhaps it makes a difference, our level and our ability of hearing, whether or not we hear a sound or whether we actually hear his voice. So again, it's something we have to tune in, it's something we have to listen. We also need to understand that this listening needs to be a continual kind of a thing, because in Bereshit or Genesis chapter 22, starting in verse 10, Yahweh had commanded Abraham to take his only begotten son, his beloved Isaac, to a place where he would show him and offer him as a sacrificial offering. So Abraham went to obey, and Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But he had to remain listening from moment to moment, because that's when the messenger of Yahweh called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." He said, "Here I am." He said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy. Do not slay him." So if we can imagine what would have happened had Abraham not continued listening. So it's a continuing conversation that he wants with us. For example, in 1 Kings chapter 19, starting in verse 12, Eliyahu, or Elijah, had fled from Ahab and Jezebel. And so he went to the mountain of Sinai, and there was a strong wind, and there was an earthquake, and then there was a fire, but Yahweh wasn't in any of those things. And then after the fire, there was a still small voice, or we could say a still small sound. So then it was, when Eliyahu heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. And suddenly a voice or a sound came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Eliyahu?" And then in Maaseh, or Acts chapter 10, starting in verse 13, the apostle Kepha, or Peter, is on a rooftop and he's having a vision. So in the vision, this giant sheet is let down with all sorts of unclean animals in it. And a voice came to Kepha saying, "Rise, Kepha, kill and eat." And Kepha said, "Not so, Adon, for I've never eaten anything common or unclean." And the voice spoke to him again the second time, saying, "What Elohim has cleansed, you must not call common." And in context, what this is speaking of, as we explained in the Nazarene Israel study and elsewhere, is that this is Elohim's way of telling Kepha to begin taking the good news to the Gentiles. So it's not only for the Jews, but also for the Gentiles, as Kepha himself says later in the chapter. And shortly after this, Cornelius was the first Gentile to be brought into the covenant in Acts chapter 10. And then in Acts chapter 11, many people were brought into the covenant in Antioch. But we're not necessarily listening for an audible voice. It can be audible, but it can also be an inaudible voice that we have to hear in the spirit or in our inner ear. For example, in Yohanan or John chapter 5, starting in verse 28, Yeshua tells us not to marvel at this, for the hour is coming in which all who are in the graves will hear his voice. Now, clearly, this is not an audible voice, or how could those in the graves hear it? We also know in Yohanan chapter 10 and verse 27, Yeshua says, "My sheep hear my voice." But if Yeshua is not physically here, then how can it be an audible voice? This has to be a spiritual voice that we have to be listening for. Just the same as in Hitgalut, or Revelation chapter 3 and verse 20. In the vision of Revelation, Yeshua says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and dine with him, and he with me." So clearly, since this is a vision, this is a spiritual voice that we're listening for. In Job chapter 33, starting in verse 14, Job says some very important things. He says, "For Elohim may speak in one way or in another, yet man does not perceive it. He can speak in a dream. He can speak in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls upon men, while slumbering on their beds. That's when he opens the ears of men and seals their instruction." Proverbs chapter 8, starting in verse 1. "Wisdom, which is the spirit, is likened to a woman, because the spirit in Hebrew is effeminate." It says, "Does not wisdom cry out, and understanding lift up her voice? She takes her stand on the top of the high hill, beside the way where the paths meet. She cries out by the gates, at the entrance of the city, at the entrance of the doors." In verse 32, he says, "Now therefore listen to me, my children. Blessed are those who keep my ways. Hear instruction, hear it and be wise, and do not disdain it. Pay attention to it." And then she says, "Blessed is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the posts of my doors." And the visual imagery here is that of the Spirit coming out of her doorway and literally posting notices, tacking them to the doorposts. So this speaks of something active. This speaks of something that we have to actually actively do. We have to seek out what it is that wisdom is saying to us. We can't just be passive and wait for voices to come to us. We have to seek wisdom as we seek for hidden treasure. We can trust and rely upon the things we hear from the Spirit. In Yohanan or John chapter 16 and verse 13, Yeshua tells us that when she, the Spirit of truth, has come, that she will guide us into all truth. For she will not speak on her own authority, but whatever she hears, that's what she will speak, and she will tell us of things to come. So we can trust her voice. We can't always be passive about this. We have to take an active role. Mishle, or Proverbs chapter 2 and verse 4 says that if we will seek her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasures, if we will ask and seek and knock, then we will understand the fear of Yahweh and find the knowledge of Elohim. So this is something active. We must be active in our pursuit of spiritual wisdom. We can't just wait for things to come to us. We also have to take care what it is that we're listening to. We have to discern the spirits. Yohanan or John chapter 4 and verse 1 tells us, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of Elohim, because many false prophets have gone out into the world." And the way we test the spirits, it's very important. Typically speaking, we can test the spirits by Yahweh's written word. Now, it might violate the letter, but it will never violate the precept. And that's why we emphasized precepts in last week's teaching. So it may violate the specific, but it's never going to violate the goal of establishing Yeshua's ordered kingdom. Further, the Spirit is never going to violate the fruits of the Spirit. If you hear a voice that sounds angry or agitated or is pushing you to do something now, hurry up, now, that's not his Spirit, because Yahweh is completely in control. He's completely in charge of all things. He's going to be a quiet voice, a still voice, a confident voice. That's how you can know it's Yahweh's Spirit. In testing the spirits, Yov or Job chapter 34 and verse 3, Yov tells us that the ear can test words as the palate tastes food. So I don't know if you've ever heard someone say, "Yeah, that sounds right," or "No, it just doesn't sound right." That's the kind of thing we're talking about when we talk about testing words as the palate tastes food. Now, another difficulty many people have is that sometimes, since we're born and raised in Babylon, many of us were abused. Many of us have problems. Many of us still have leftover confusion from the Babylonian system. So we need to learn how to quiet and still ourselves. Finally, we should mention that there's also a strong emotional component to all this. If you've ever known someone who wasn't comfortable with silence, they always have to have the TV blaring, or they always have to have the radio on because they're not comfortable just sitting quietly and having a conversation with Elohim. Or if you've known someone, perhaps he's afraid for the end times. He's afraid what's going to happen for his family. This is why, speaking according to the Spirit, David says in Tehillim or Psalms, chapter 46 and verse 10, "Be still and know that he is Elohim. He's going to win. He will be exalted among the nations. He will be exalted in all the earth." So if we simply stay with him, he'll be with us. And everything's going to be okay. It's all going to work out all right if we will listen to his voice and keep his house rules. This is also if you've met people who have inner turmoil. Now, we've all been raised in Babylon. Some of us have been abused. Some of us were given complexes by our families, by our parents, by our neighbors, these kinds of things. Again, speaking by the Spirit, David says in Tehillim or Psalms 131, verse 2, "Surely I have calmed and quieted my soul, like a weaned child with his mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me." And today, weaned simply means that we're no longer taking milk. But back then, in those days, weaned meant that we are now responsible young adults who have self-control over our own emotions. So that's the importance of biblical weaning. But this is something, it's a responsibility for each and every one of us to do. So if you have inner turmoil and you have doubts or fears or complexes that are stopping you in your relationship with Yahweh Elohim, ask Him. Ask Him to help you calm and quiet your soul and to become like a weaned child with self-control. These are the kinds of things that we all need to learn to do in order to hear Yahweh's voice so that we can please Him by obeying it. And we're going to talk more about the ramifications of that next week when we talk about the two different types of prophecy. Shalom.